Awesome. So first up, thank you guys all for attending the Columbus Tableau user group. I know the last few weeks we've had some last minute cancellations, so we thank you all for your patience during that time. We have brought on another Columbus Tableau user group co-leader, Heather Gao, who's joining us today. And then Steve Geis is currently out on paternity leave, so we'll be running the calls for the next couple of months. We do have a lot of great content and speakers lined up for the remainder of the year. We're trying to formalize the dates for those, as well as who we're placing into each one of those buckets so that you guys have the best resources and events that we can put on for you guys. With that, today's event is going to be featuring Steve Wexler talking about what you should do and when you should do it, some suggestions on when to use data visualization, storytelling, infographics, and dashboards. And then following that, we'll have Mark Bradbourne, who's going to do a Tableau conference recap. So for anyone who went to TC22 in person, hopefully you're feeling great and got a lot of cool features, enhancements, or things that you could take back to your own organization. But if you weren't able to attend, Mark will catch you up to speed on all the latest and greatest coming out of TC 2022. So with that, I'll kick it over to you, Steve.
Okay. Hey, everybody, and thanks for having me here today. Let me share my screen and we will get into this. So what you should do and when you should do it, some suggestions on when to use data visualization, storytelling, infographics, and dashboards. Let me just set a few things up here. It is nice to be back at home doing this as opposed to sequestered in a hotel in Vegas with not enough screens. Much better. So very briefly about me, I am the founder, principal, sole employee of Data Revelations. Hold on one second. I'm still missing one screen. There we go. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Viz champion. That was back in 1957. I'm a Tableau Visionary Hall of Famer. My current title is I'm a professional chart looker adder. That seems to be what I'm doing most of the time is people say, hey, can you look at this? What do you think of it? Can it be improved? What do you like about it, etc. And I'm also the author of 2 books, actually a co-author along with Andy Cotgreave and Jeffrey Schaefer of The Big Book of Dashboards, and more recently, the author of The Big Picture, how to use data visualization to make better decisions faster. And a lot of the content that's in here is based on stuff that you can find in The Big Picture. Any of you who have attended a workshop I've given or a presentation have probably seen some variation of this slide. I don't want to say the word variant of this slide, and that is you are encouraged to disagree with me. Good things happen when we debate and discuss these things being around data visualization. So if there's something I'm saying that doesn't resonate, you think there's a better way to do it, your experiences have proven differently, let's discuss that. Obviously, let's do it in a cordial manner. Lots of discussions about, well, wait a minute, what's data visualization? What's data storytelling? And I'm going to recommend a book that now a friend and colleague, Brent Dykes, wrote, but he contacted me on LinkedIn, and I thought, oh gosh, yet another book about data storytelling. This book is great, so highly recommended. And if you were to force me to try to encapsulate what is data visualization, what is data storytelling, if I were to reduce this wonderful book just to 2 sentences, I would say it's you use data visualization to discover insights that you might never have seen without the visualization. That's kind of why we're all here. It's why Tableau is here. You use data storytelling as your mechanism to communicate these insights. So visualization will help you find and see them, but then how exactly you go about communicating that, I'm going to show you a few examples of it. Here is data visualization, 7-day rolling average COVID cases, King County. Sorry, yes, we are still talking about COVID cases in various presentations. We're not done with that yet. So this is a data visualization. Well, this annotation layer, that's a storytelling element. And in particular, this thing over here, when 7-day rolling averages go up this quickly, you've got a serious problem on your hands. So here's the visualization. Hey, that looks interesting. I better call out something about it. Now, I'm not saying that a simple annotation layer is just data storytelling, but I think you get the idea. So let's look at this visualization, which you can just see how this is metamorphosed. Top greenhouse gas emitters, billion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent on a 20-year warming potential. And look at what we're comparing here. We're comparing China with cows and dairy, USA, India, and Russia. So that's a data visualization. Sorry about that. Here might be some data storytelling, a nice annotation layer, but in the hands of someone really gifted, in this case, Gabrielle Merit at McKinsey and Company, this is what she did. And this is like one of my favorite graphics from 2021. It's going to stop you. You're going to look at it. You can't help but notice this thing. And I consider this powerful, compact data storytelling just in one particular image, as opposed to a whole narrative or several different facets that you want to explore. Really well done. By the way, the height of the cow is accurate. People say, wait a minute, am I supposed to be comparing the volume of the cow with the volume of the other things? No, it's the height. We can quibble. As for what are infographics, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, have I ever defined what an infographic is? My gosh, we spent months coming up with a definition of what a dashboard is for the big book of dashboards. I kind of tried to help you a little bit with data storytelling versus data visualization. And what's an infographic? And I find myself kind of thinking about Justice Potter Stewart. I'm curious, does anyone know what this former Supreme Court justice is most famous for, or I think what he's most famous for? I'll give you a couple of opportunities to type into chat if you have an idea of, and someone's looking, madly searching this on the internet. Thank you. Well done, Patrick. I know it when I see it. And asked to define pornography, he said, I know it when I see it. And I realized that's kind of my way of describing an infographic. I'm going to borrow from Randy Krum, who wrote Cool Infographics, very good book from Wiley. It's usually a larger graphic design that combines data visualization, illustration, text, and images together into a format that tells a complete story. The entire story can be encapsulated in the infographics. It's not a curated presentation. It's one thing. They are also, this is mine now embellishing, they're also for not clearly defined audiences. So you often have to grab that audience's attention. So here's an example that's Stephen Few, who's a name I know Mark Bradbourne knows well. He was very well known in the data visualization community until he kind of retired from it. He's written some wonderful books about data visualization. Now You See It, Show Me the Numbers are two of my favorite. He had a big problem with this infographic, sprawling infographic from Time Magazine on why we still need Women's Equality Day. You're only seeing about a third of the graphic, by the way. And it's showing that women represent more than 50% of voters, but in the Supreme Court, they're only 3 out of 9. In Congress, 104 out of 530. Each of these things is a different graphic. We've got a waffle chart, we got a pie chart, et cetera, et cetera. And Stephen Few said, this is an important subject. You're making the comparisons difficult. He did something like this. I took the same data. Here was my way of rendering it, which is that more than 50% of the American population, the voting population, is women. 54%. Yes, but these comparisons that were hard to do there, it's really easy to see. The closest representation is on the Supreme Court, and the farthest representation is number of governors. Now, take a look at this visualization. Sorry about that. And now compare it, simple bar chart. Look at what happens when you put this in the hands of someone who's a really good graphic artist. This is what Alberto Cairo put together. And he'll be the first to say, look, this isn't great. He did it in about 10 minutes. So the bar chart is pretty much exactly what I had done there. But he's created a compelling title that's up here. He's got some commentary here, and he's got some visuals along the left and along the right to help draw people in. He'll be the first to say, yeah, it looks like the guy's holding a boomerang. I get it. But you've got this sprawling thing on the left, which makes the comparisons difficult and can take 2-3 minutes to parse through. And you've got this very clean, easy to see where the degree of underrepresentation, yet he's going to draw you in pretty compellingly. So that's kind of my brief take on infographics. So I'm going to ask a question now. We've talked about data storytelling, infographics. Why do you need dashboards? Asked the guy who co-authored a book about dashboards. And I had a panic when I was going to be attending Cole Nussbaumer-Knaflich's wonderful workshop, Storytelling with Data, based on her same book. This is before the big book of dashboards came out. This is over 5 years ago. I'm attending this workshop, and the stuff is great. And I'm thinking, why does anybody need to make it? Why is anybody going to need to buy the book that we've been spent 18 months writing this thing? And she used a wonderful metaphor in describing how much work it can take to present just one really good finding. And I'm going to paraphrase. You have to shuck a lot of oysters to find a single pearl in your presentations. Don't show all the shells you shucked, just show the pearl. And I realized, oh my gosh, a dashboard could be like an automated oyster shucker, that it can be things that will help you find the important things in your data so much faster. Now, how you end up presenting that, well, that may be a little bit different. But I felt so good about this that yes, for sure, curating and finding and presenting things succinctly is key, but a dashboard is going to help you find where the nuggets are, where the pearls are faster. I'm going to show you an example of this, of a dashboard kind of bringing something to light and then maybe running with it in a different direction. So I'm going to invoke Makeover Monday, which is one of my favorite social media data visualization platforms or programs that Andy Kriebel ran with a number of partners for a number of years. I'm sorry to see it go, although there's a relatively new one that's out from Mark Bradbourne called Real World Fake Data that I just love. But I love the idea of this, which was, here's a data visualization that was out in the wild. Here's, in fact, the data visualization that was put together, and trying to show how the world broke down by gender, by continent, by area, et cetera. Here's the source data. If the world were 100 people, and it's interesting that this approach, if the world were 100 people, how might we look at it? Mark, I know this is going to play into your discussion of Iron Viz in the not too distant future. If the world were 100 people, 50 would be female, 50 would be male, 25 would be children, etc. Well, how would you visualize this data? On your mark, get set, go, and hundreds of people took on this data, and they all took different approaches. This was the original one that acted as the inspiration for this. Here's something from Carl Alchin. Here's something from Michael Mixon. And I want to discuss our definition of what a dashboard, our meaning mine, Andy Cockreeves, Jeff Schaefer. This is after months, we came up with this intentionally open-ended definition of a dashboard. A dashboard is a visual display of data used to monitor conditions and or facilitate understanding. And this is what I created. I didn't publish this thing, or maybe I did publish it, but I don't think anybody's going to stop and go, oh my gosh, I am just blown away by this data visualization. But it did help me understand all the data that was there and make comparisons and then decide, what is it that I want to do with this data now that I've seen it? And I'm going to focus on one thing in particular, which is breaking down by nutrition. Adequate nutrition, overweight, undernourished, and starving. Here, we'll just focus on this for a second. And you can see 1 out of 100 people are starving. Now, in my hands, this is just a straightforward, boring bar chart. But maybe if I realize, what am I going to do to make somebody really feel this or think about it or recognize what does it mean for 1 out of 100 people on a planet this large? And fortunately, it wasn't entrusted to me. I'll show you what Athan Marthovonis did with this in Makeover Monday rather brilliantly. So he had the understanding of the data, said, but that's not going to stop anybody from turning from page 13 to page 14. And I think this is an incredibly compelling way to show this data. And notice the very sparing use of color. The entire thing is done in black and white. I think he did this originally in Illustrator, and somebody asked him if he could do it in Tableau, and he did. Some stunning work there. So one use of where the dashboards is, hey, you're going to use this to help you understand the data. Maybe you share that dashboard with your stakeholders. Certainly most of my stuff that I'm building, I'm sharing. The other is, why do you need a dashboard? Well, curated versus exploratory. You know, when you're telling a data story, it's, I found something, some insights, I think they're important. I have a narrative, I'm going to share it with you. Or maybe it's just that, you know, if cows were a country, one-off, a very impactful image. But sometimes it's, gee, I need to explore this stuff a little bit. So here is something from a working hedge fund dashboard looking at return by sector and fund. So we have these different sectors here, and you can see the ones in blue are profitable, the ones in orange are unprofitable, and you can see, whoa, sector K over here, let me change the focus of this, is very volatile over here. But is it still, even though those things are, there's a lot of negative, overall, you know, which are profitable, which are unprofitable? Oh, we need more than one chart to show that. So now I've got profit and loss. And well, those are by sectors. Maybe I want to look at each individual fund. Okay, now I can see this by each individual fund. Well, we need to have some big ass numbers or bands that we put at the top. Now I understand, oh, the blue means profitable, the orange means unprofitable, if that wasn't obvious already. But now, you know, I'm really curious about sector K. So I can select it and it will highlight all the different funds. And I can see a lot of them are profitable, but the two least profitable ones are clearly visible down at the bottom over here. And gee, if I can figure out what to do about that, sector K may be one of my best, may go from barely profitable to massively profitable. Same with when you have a wonderful slide like this. By the way, having a good title in a curated presentation makes a huge difference. So copiers and facts have gone from second worst to fourth best. What happens when someone says, yeah, but I'd like to know about a different category? Well, I can't tell you how many organizations I've seen create 500 slide decks so that they have every different version that someone, you know, each stakeholder may look at. Well, this is why you want a dashboard. This is why you want, after you give the presentation, to have your trusty dashboard that fueled the presentation so you can answer these ad hoc questions. Oh, you want to know how chair and chair mats are doing? I can answer that instantly for you, as opposed to creating a mind-numbing deck. So I've got to tell you, a good dashboard can help you find good stories. But I'm now about to tell you something that I think may be a little controversial. I think it's okay to have a boring dashboard. That's fine. But the presentation around the findings should be absolutely riveting. And I'll also confess, I don't think a dashboard by itself is a great place to tell a story per se. It's a great place to find where the stories are. Now, I have a confession. So I've been doing this stuff for a long time, written some books on the stuff. I was an Iron Viz champion, but Jesus, I can't compete with the folks that are doing the stuff now. When Mark shares the stuff from the Tableau conference, and I'm sure a lot of people here have already seen that. But I'll see something like this from Johnny Walker, a former Tableau employee, published this 2-3 years ago, or Mike Cisneros, currently works at Storytelling with Data. He was a Tableau, they called them Zen Masters back in the day, Tableau Zen Master for a couple of years, or Ludovic Tavernier. These are all created in Tableau, for God's sake. Or something like this. This is definitely not created in Tableau. This is from Georgia Lupi. And I am really intimidated by this, all these things, that I have reasonable design panache, but nothing like that. And wondering, well, I'm never going to make something like this type of thing. Why am I even bothering? And realize you have massively wonderful things that you can contribute to the world. You don't have to make necessarily these artistic pieces of art. Also, don't be thrown by some of the stuff you'll see in like Makeover Monday or some of the other makeover exercises. So I really liked this initiative. I was sorry to see it go. I can understand why, the amount of time and attention it takes to run weekly or even monthly. I'm not going to call these, they're not contests or anything, or submissions, where you have a lot of people taking same data and you're looking at each person, you're trying to give them feedback, etc. I mean, I have nothing but mad respect for what Mark Bradbourne's doing with real world fake data. But let me show you some examples of stuff and where I fear people kind of go off the rails, and where there are other people who are making these great things, but maybe they're not being as heralded as other stuff. So let me show you an example. Here was the visualization that got Andy Kriebel, and maybe it was Eva Murray at the time, to go, oh, you know, this deserves a makeover. It's saying Snapchat is top with American teens, that it went from only, you know, I'm not exactly sure what the question was, but it's probably, you know, which of these social media platforms do you use? Check all that apply. And it went from 11% to 47% of teens using Snapchat versus Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Now, this is now a number of years ago. Well, is this the best way to visualize this data? And let's see what other people came up with. All right, well, here's Mahfouz Khan came up with this way. He decided to create a waffle chart. And here is Corey Jones, and he decided to use a Power BI calls it a ribbon chart. The person who developed the technique, I want you to look at something, because this is going to come up. Designed by Corey Jones, chart technique, Roddy Zakovich, right? Roddy Zakovich said, hey, I've come up with a way to do this. He called it an area bump chart, and it's showing that it's going from fourth place to first place. And also we can kind of get a sense of just, you know, that a lot more people are using Snapchat than Twitter. I've got to say, every time I see this chart, it just reminds me of Beatles' Yellow Submarine, right? Let's look at some of the other examples that came about. Okay, this is Colin Wojciech, and now going, okay, this is a little more my speed, just a line chart. Let me show you the one that I think wins the day in terms of clarity and simplicity, and going, oh, this thing went not just from worst to first, but I can see how much bigger it is than everything else. Look how clear that is. And I got to show you, look who made this thing. The same guy who developed the curvy technique of doing the area bump chart, ribbon chart, just because he can out curvy any of you, okay? But he didn't, because he's thinking, is this going to serve my audience? Is this going to be the easiest way for people to understand what's going on? So my respect for the guy is just enormous. He has incredible math and data visualization chops. He can, you know, blow you away with curvy stuff, but he came up with an incredibly clear way to show this. Excuse me there. Could have muted that when I did the cough. All right. Another Makeover Monday example, and I know that Mark is now shuddering a little bit. And this is what the most profitable companies make per second. And by the way, if you can parse this chart, you've got mad skills. You know, it took me, 2-3 minutes to understand what's going on. It's like, I think there are 25 different companies here. And here's the way to read this. Apple, the year this was done, every second of the day, they made $1,444 in profit. In the time it has taken me to tell you this, they made $25,000 compared with JP Morgan, compared with Berkshire Hathaway, all the way going down to this. Would you show it this way? I would certainly not show it this way. Would it stop me? Would I stop and possibly read it in a magazine? Maybe. All right. Let's look at this version from Zach Geis. Thank you. Great job. What do the most profitable companies make per second? Highlighting Apple. Apple leads by a large margin. Killer job. Super easy to make the comparison. And maybe there's a whole article about Apple's profitability. Really love this one from Curtis Harris. He's created this very compact mobile version of it. Isn't that kind of a nice technique? He has all those numbers right aligned over there, and then he is putting the name of the company inside the bar so that this will fit on a mobile device. And if I know Curtis well, I'm sure this is downloadable from his profile, and you can see, how did he do that? That's pretty cool. Now, this guy has a superpower. This comes from Philip Riggs. He's a cartoonist. So he's going to stop you from looking at this. And he wanted to look at Gilead Sciences because that's is involved with pharmaceuticals, and he was interested in that particular facet. What pharmaceutical company has it is the most profitable? And I think he did a great job. By the way, you're seeing every one of these things is a variety of bar chart. Well, I'm now going to show you the version that Mark Bradbourne published, and people kind of went gaga over it, and I can understand why. Okay, this is the one from Mark Bradbourne, and the length of the arc is how profitable things are. And I remember seeing this and going, the title's wrong, and it shouldn't be what the most profitable companies make per second. It should be North Korean ballistic missile tests. And I asked Mark permission, could I show this in here? And he said, gosh, of course. He was just experimenting with a technique. He wanted to try the technique of the length of the arc. It's something that can be used very effectively in time bump charts and things like that. The concern I had was, gee, no one's looking at those other bar charts. They're all going, oh, how do I make something that looks like this? Thinking, if I had this data, I guess I should be making something that looks like this. The same week, the New York Times had this article, What Teenagers Are Learning from Online Porn. And this stuff readily available, and thinking, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to behave. Back then, it didn't help that Tableau's homepage looked like this, which is, that's certainly visually arresting. You're not going to learn anything from it. But my concern was, people are seeing all these things and going, well, what am I supposed to do? I thought I was supposed to make a bar chart, but everybody's going crazy over the, over the ARChy thing. So I'm thinking, my guess is many of you, your world is similar to mine. I'm not creating infographics for general population. I'm using Tableau, and it's usually for internal purposes. Maybe it's customer facing, but the design pressures that are on me is, if it's just for me, it's really simple. If it's for a work group, departmental, each time you get bigger and bigger, the thing's got to be a little more polished, a little slicker, a little fancier. If it's done for the executive, the hardest stuff I work on is customer facing, meaning that the dashboard is a reflection of the company brand. And then there's this stuff out in the general public. Think Wired magazine stuff. And the feeling that this has to be amazing. I don't live here. If you're asking me to make an infographic for you, it means the other 15 people you called were busy. So this notion that you feel I need to attract and then inform, engage, and persuade, I don't buy that within a defined audience setting, a defined audience setting. I think you need to inform, engage, and persuade. But by all means, make your visualizations attractive. So you should always be asking the following. Who is your audience? What's the message? And you are here, your gig is to provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. Now, the least amount of effort is for your audience. You may have to work your ass off on this. Excuse me one second. So I do want to show you a couple of quick examples. These all come from the big picture. This first one, so some good, some storytelling examples, and where you didn't have to go crazy and do the bizarre curvy stuff, but simple, straightforward ways of getting people to understand stuff. Some of it is simple bar charts. Some of it kind of left the simple stuff. This one comes from Cole Nussbaumer Knaflic. There's a made-up pharmaceutical company. The data, then the situation, the case study, this is real, but I'm changing the names. Pharmaceutical company Universa concluded a marketing study comparing their recently FDA-approved anti-anxiety drug Mercalax to their primary competitors. The study included patient participants who had taken both Mercalax and the competitor product for a set period of time. The results show a marked preference for Mercalax versus the competition. Here's the slide they came up with, and people were confused. By the way, there, somewhere on this slide, not highlighted, with big pink bars around them, is the clear preference for Mercalax versus the competitor. Well, Cole worked with this team of people, and they realized they had to define the audience. And they realized it wasn't one audience. There were two distinct audiences they were going after. One were psychiatrists who would be attending a luncheon where someone would give a presentation and needed maybe 20 minutes to get them thinking and get them realizing we have a much better product here. The second were sales reps who had at most 90 seconds to convince physicians that, hey, we have a much better product. They came up with these two different slides. Now, I'm not expecting anyone on the left, anyone to really immediately grasp the left slide, because it was done in sequence using storytelling, unlike that one-off like if cows were a country. So they started with this. Consider a square. Imagine a single square represents a patient in our study. There were 99 patients in the study. 10 didn't have a preference. 70 people preferred Mercalax. 19 preferred the competitor. Of the reasons why, 34 people cited a lack of mood swings. 29 people cited better anxiety relief. 7 people didn't say, said for other reasons. So the person walking them through this kind of took them through it piecemeal, and it became type of a puzzle, eventually culminating in this. For the other group of people, it was, hey, 71% like us, 19% like them. Here are the reasons why. Boom. And the impact was immediate. Higher sales, but also they weren't getting weird oddball questions. People got what they was trying to say. And two different charts presented in two different ways. Now that waffle chart, I'd like to, if you don't already know him, this is one of my co-authors in the Big Book of Dashboards, one of the hosts of Iron Viz. This is Andy Cotgreave, and I want to tell you about Cotgreave's Law. Cotgreave's Law is the longer an innovative visualization exists, the probability someone says it should have been a line or bar chart approaches 1, which is exactly what I told Cole when she gave me this case study using data visualization to convince people or make a big change in an organization. I said, why didn't you do it like this? Look, big bar for Mercalax, smaller bars for the competitor, no preference. Oh, if you want to show these are actually people, make it a unit chart. Or if you want to make it show that they're people, use isotypes to show, look, many more people like this than that. And she said they tried that. And the waffle chart, and I, probably in my entire career have created all 5 waffle charts, it worked better for this audience with someone walking them through it step by step. By the way, a waffle chart sparse data and things like this, or understanding the effectiveness of testing and things like that can be very powerful. This is one of my favorite data viz practitioners on the planet, Lindsay Poulter, who also competed in Iron Viz in 2019, and showing that there are only 5 Black CEOs in the 2020 Fortune 500 list. That is a very effective way to show this. So you don't see it that often, but when used properly, Waffle Chart can really be something. I'm again going to go off the Mr. Boring bar chart, and I'm going to show you a stratification modeling example. This comes from Greg Lewandowski, one of the great contributors to the Tableau community. And he was tasked with, someone said, we'd like to know who our top 25 partners are, or our top 50 partners are. And he would say our top 10 partners are. And he said, why do you want to know who your top 25 are? I said, no one had an answer. It was, I don't know, isn't that what people do in organizations? They look to see who their top 25 are. And by the way, I'm happy to see comments coming in on chat. Sorry that I can't really respond to them. I will a little bit later. And he ended up doing an analysis, and I thought he was going a totally different way with it. I thought it was going to be an 80-20 type of thing, where 80% of our sales come from 20% of our partners. He said, no, 25% of our this company has 25,000 partners, 25,000. 25% of their sales are coming from 9 of them. The next 25% of sales are coming from just 33 partners. The next 25% is coming from 192. It's like 1% of their partners are responsible for 75% of their sales. So he chose to demonstrate it like this. Again, imagine each dot is a partner. There are 25,000 dots. There are all our partners. 25% of our income is coming from these people. 75% of our income is coming from this. And it blew people away. Now, I can't believe I'm ever suggesting using packed bubbles. I mean, if asked, how many times out of 100 should I use a bar or line chart for something eye-catching? I would say 99 times out of 100, use the bar or line chart. Maybe 1 time out of 100, use something eye-catching. By the way, the reason this works, I don't need to make exact comparisons. Bar charts are amazing at allowing mere mortals, of which we are all, to make astoundingly accurate comparisons. I don't need an accurate comparison here. I don't need to see it's 1,840 times as big versus 1,710 times as big. I just need to see, holy crap, there are so few dots and 75% of our income is coming from that. Well, the impact was one of shock and awe. They called it the Jawbreaker Visualization because that was the sound of people's jaws hitting the table when they suddenly realized visually how few partners were responsible for so much income, and totally made them question their partnership program. I'm going to share one in my own career. It was the first time that I created a data visualization that had really resonated with people, that really struck. And my gosh, it was so powerful. I was determined anytime I visualize something, I'd love to have that effect. I'd love to create a dashboard, create a narrative that gets people thinking about the data. So let me give you the setup for it. I'm working with a major healthcare company. They have data on thousands of companies and millions of people. It's a major healthcare concern. Think of it being like not an insurance company, but something like that. Their goal was to save costs and perhaps save lives through compliance. They need to get buy-in from the company and from the employees to stick with various wellness programs. So they had data on heart disease, they had data on cancer. In this case, they were focusing on incidence of diabetes. So they were looking at, let's target the companies that have really an higher incidence of diabetes compared to other similar organizations. So they might create a slide like this, which is, nicely designed. Incidence of diabetes, your organization, 18.5%. Average of all organizations, 4.9%. It got concerned looks, but no one was determined to, what do we need to do immediately to improve this? That's the result they wanted to get. This slide didn't do that. So instead, I'm going to show you some simple data visualization combined with some simple data storytelling that did get people to notice and did get them to change things. So we kind of did this similar type of thing, this disaggregated data. There are 790 different organizations, each represented by a dot. Dots down here doing way better than dots up here. You want to be down here, low incidence of diabetes. By the way, it's pretty hard to see that there are 790 dots, so we jittered them a bit. And you can see, whoa, they're very sparse up here, but it's really tightly packed over here. Okay, now I see the 790 dots and gotcha. We want to be down near the bottom. Here's a demarcation point. Anything above this line, you are in the worst 1%. And here's where your organization is. And it had a profound effect. I'd never seen people react to a data visualization that I had made with a visceral feeling. And by the way, there's nothing really fancy going on here. This is all simple pre-attentive attribute stuff. It's the position of dots from a common baseline. And it's, I can see this dot is way higher and an unenviable outlier compared with the massive amount of other dots. So I want to give you some useful guidelines on how maybe you should be looking at this. And you may disagree with me, and that's fine. All right, one of my favorites is first pants, then your shoes. Famous Far Side cartoon. Aha first, then ooh ah. And the reason I kind of laughingly say that I'm a professional chart looker-atter is that if I'm having trouble parsing and figuring out your chart, your dashboard, all I do is look at charts and dashboards. And if I'm having trouble understanding what's going on, I'm wondering if people who don't spend as much time will have trouble with it. But always get the aha first. And that, boy, that's really useful. If you can then create something which is beautiful and has an emotional tug, go ahead and do that. Lindsay Poulter does that. And I've got to say the Iron Viz entries nailed that this year. Always be asking, who is your audience? Wonderful quote that came up. I had not seen this before. I read it in Say It with Charts from George Zalensky, book that's been around for about 25 years. I love this. Designing a presentation without an audience in mind is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. So, who is your audience? What's the message? And you are here to provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And just one other little piece of advice is always be thinking, am I helping my audience or am I showing off how smart I am? And I've been very guilty at times of, oh, I'm going to blow people away. I'm going to do this fancy thing. Ooh, they're going to go ooh and ah. And am I showing off that I'm smart or am I actually helping people see and understand the data? Looking at how these things all fit together, I see you need visualization for dashboards. I think you need dashboards that help you find where the most effective stories are. And then maybe you compact your stories into an infographic. I find this can be hard because the audience is not clearly defined. And in terms of resources for these things, oh my gosh, look, I'm going to be a little self-serving here. But for basic visualization, you've got a wonderful new book from Jonathan Schwabash, Better Data Visualizations, Andy Kirk's Data Visualization. The big picture is more for the consumers of charts and dashboards than the practitioner. For dashboards, yeah, I can say without compunction, I'm going to recommend the Big Book of Dashboards, but also Stephen Few's excellent book, Information Dashboard Design. Lots of great books on storytelling. Storytelling with data is probably my favorite. I love effective data storytelling, and Presentation Zen from Gar Reynolds just is wonderful. He was one of the early keynote presenter at Tableau conference. And for infographics, I really like Cool Infographics from Randy Crum. By the way, I have a workshop coming up. What every business person needs to know about data visualization. I think a lot of people here already know a lot of the stuff that's covered, but if you are trying to get your stakeholders or your boss or others in your organization to value data visualization, maybe this would be helpful. There's the URL for it, bigpic.me/June. I'll put that in the chat later. And I am very happy to continue the discussions about this or your disagreements. Go to datarevelations.com and you can find me on Twitter at datarevelations or Wexler at datarevelations. And let me stop sharing the screen and happy to look at, do we have any, I know we're in a, I guess we're in a webinar versus a meeting mode. So have any questions come up, or Erin or Mark or Heather? Do any of you want to pipe in and go, Steve, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. You're out of your mind. That's not what you should be using this stuff for. I think all of you would be quite a bit more respectful than that. But if you disagree, I want to hear it. And Mark, again, thank you for letting me share that wonderful North Korean ballistic missile test slide. You have been and continue to be a really good egg.
Well, my parents always wanted me to be an example to people. I just didn't realize it would be the bad example to people, but you know.
Yes, in my high school yearbook, I was cited as most likely to be the before picture.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A and we can ask those to Steve. I think this was a great presentation and really informative. When you think about the difference between a dashboard and an infographic, a lot of times people can tend to put those two together, and at least with folks that I work with, and it's really about separating those. Yes, they can tell a story, but it's about how you're presenting it and what your audience is.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I see it as, oh my gosh, I don't see it a dashboard as being an infographic at all. But there's a fellow, and I think everyone here should follow. His name is Nick DeBara. That's the way it's pronounced. It's spelled Des Barrett's. He has taken over Stephen Few's courses. Though Stephen was kind of cranky, Nick is very open-minded, and he gave a presentation at the 2019 Tableau conference. He said the 13 types of visual presentations that are unfortunately all called dashboards. Now he's kind of not calling for, but has created kind of this rigorous hierarchy of what each of these things are and what they mean. And I disagree with the need to do that, but it all comes down to your audience expectations. And someone's expecting a static report and you give them an interactive dashboard, they're going, well, this is not what I thought. I asked for a dashboard. And you go, well, this is a dashboard. Or you give somebody an infographic and they're going, well, what is this nonsense with all this verbiage on it? I wanted something that I could explore on my own. Well, this is, this is an infographic. Well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a dashboard. So I'm Andy Cotgreave, Jeff Schaefer, and myself may be a little guilty for having this very open-ended definition of the dashboard, but just make sure what you're delivering is pretty close to what your audience had in mind. And thank you, man, Patrick, you are just kicking today on this. He's found it. Nick quickly. Also, I'm going to put the couple URLs in.
I muted. You would think after a few years I would learn to unmute myself. He did have one question. Do you think when you're talking about the COVID stats, do you think those or the scrolly type stories New York Times and others do have the potential to replace some subset of dashboards to improve timed insight / communication? It's a bit of work to put those together, especially if they need to be repeatedly updated.
Let me see that again, as that is a, sorry, that was well put, but I was in the process of trying to fix something Would you mind repeating that? Because I heard most of it and I went, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about the COVID stats. You said, do you think those or the scrolly type stories New York Times and others do have the potential to replace some subset of dashboards to improve time to insight and communication? It's a bit of work to put those together, especially if they need to be repeatedly updated.
Well, if they're hard to put together and they have to be repeatedly updated and they need to be used on a regular basis, then it's not tenable. But if you look at some of the scrolly telling stuff, and also some of the, oh, you're allowing me to explore things that are important to me, but Erin is going to go on a different pathway and explore things that are important to her. So something that scrolly telling type of example was back in January and February of 2021, a lot of people were wondering, well, when do I get the vaccine? The vaccine's available. How long do I have to wait in line? And it was a whole interactive thing saying, well, where do you live? And how old are you? And are you an essential health worker, et cetera? And then it would kind of show where you were in this. So that, I would call that a type of dashboard. There was some interactivity, there was some back and forth, and there was some exploratory aspects to it. And it helped me understand the data. And it was super refined to any audience that was interacting with it, because it was the way Mark would use it, or Heather would use it, or Erin would use it, or my best bud Patrick, who's just been crushing it in chat today, would use it. Will each be different, but we all found it remarkably useful. And any of you, Mark and stuff, anything you'd want to refine or say or disparage, anything that didn't sound right to any of you, or you think no, or that you would emphasize, or the takeaways. I'd like to hear this, because I'm not convinced I'm right on all of this by any means.
I'm convinced you're right. I've seen you present a number of times, and I feel like every time I learn something and I take something away from it, which is fantastic. And it's unfortunate for me that I have to follow you. But
oh no, you kind of showed that you can be in a you can be in front of 5,000 people and hold the room, Mark.
But no, I've become a evangelist of your most information with the least amount of effort. And I laugh when you show that arc thing, because it's been 5 years since I did that, back, when I was doing Makeover Monday every week and just trying different things. Because I would never do that now. Like I feel like I've become much more refined, much more of a bar chart, line chart guy. So,
well, what you did at the time was, hey, I'm just experimenting with stuff, and I had the problem was oh, look at the great compact solution from Curtis Harris. He came up with a really elegant way to fit this stuff in mobile. Oh, look at this other one. And the thing that's getting retweeted all over the place is the ballistic missiles thing. So that's the only reason that I called the thing out. By the way, let's imagine we've got an x-axis and a y-axis, and we've got boring to amazing, and we have unhelpful to massively useful. Okay, the aha first, and then the the aha, and then ooh-ah. There are some people that do both. Mark, you were the sous visor for two of the finest I've ever seen. One who won, and one, had they changed the criteria, would have won. I think Lindsay Poulter is my favorite embodiment of aha, and ooh-ah. And certainly Will this year, kind of nailed that. Please get the aha first. And then if you can make the thing beautiful, and oh my gosh, this is just, who doesn't want to be in a Tesla versus a Trabant? Okay. Of course you want to have it, in a beautiful automobile, and something that feels and works wonderfully. So that's kind of just my take on that. All right. Anything else?
Nothing in the chat. Going once, going twice. Awesome. If you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or reach out to Steve in the meantime, or give him feedback on the presentation. With that, we'll kick it over to Mark to give us a recap of TC 2022.
Okay. And I will say before I start, if you haven't read Steve's new book, The Big Picture, I highly recommend it. Buy it for your boss because it's fantastic reading.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to hang and heckle you quietly.
All right. Well, I have probably 10 useful slides and just some filler around the edges, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Tableau Conference and what happened. It's unfortunate that I actually didn't see a whole lot of conference, simply for the fact that I was involved with IronViz, and after IronViz, I have a problem saying no when people ask me to do things. So I was running around a little bit, but I'll do my best. So here's the corporate forward-looking statement. Anything that I say here is subject to change. Don't make any purchasing decisions based on anything that I say. But I feel like that's just solid life experience anytime you're interacting with me. So we'll talk a little bit about what happened. We'll cover the keynote, which was interesting this year. Rather than having the primary keynote and then a separate keynote for devs on stage, they actually combined them this year. Talk a little bit about IronViz, and I'm just going to cover a little bit of Hannah Fry's talk. So the keynote, the focus of the keynote was the data gap, and this is kind of what the gist of it was. Is basically data leaders want employees to have a deeper data skill level, and Mark Nelson, the CEO for Tableau, really focused on how Tableau can bridge that gap. He drew some parallels between Salesforce's efforts in this, talking about both passionate communities. I talked about the quality of both platforms. Obviously, they're both industry leading platforms. And the two companies' values, both, obviously before the acquisition, and, part of the reason why Tableau was acquired was because we had a very similar value set. And he focused down on the philanthropy pieces of it. So, Salesforce has done like $500 million in grants. The Tableau Foundation recently hit 100 million on its own, which is fantastic. And we actually saw a little bit deeper dive into that before IronViz on Wednesday. But the thing that I got out of the keynote, and this is probably, I don't know, I'm probably putting on my community hat versus my employee hat here. But it was a bit of a sales pitch for the data fam, right? For the Tableau community, to educate them that basically Salesforce isn't the enemy. And I feel like a lot of people in the community kind of have that feeling at times, when they see things changing or whatnot, or they're concerned about product roadmap. They're different products with different purposes, culturally, value-wise, they're very similar. And everything that I've heard from kind of Salesforce leadership is they don't want to screw up the Tableau magic. So that was kind of the talking line that I got out of it. And that's the feeling I got, not just from the keynote, but honestly from the whole conference. The big announcement, at least from a product standpoint, was the rebranding of Tableau Online to Tableau Cloud. Some of the cool things that they're adding is within Tableau Cloud, you can now launch multiple sites within, and they are regional. So if your headquartered pod is, on the Northeast, but you've got a European unit that has some castle laws, the data has to stay, you can actually set up a site associated with your pod in one of our European pods, which is awesome. Personally, I think it's a game changer. The fact that not only can you do multiple sites, but you can do regional sites. So that might open the door for a few companies to do that move to the cloud. They also announced Advanced Management, which is just a rebrand of Server Management, but it is for Tableau Cloud specifically. So now your server admins who are, adminning Tableau Cloud, they'll be able to get some of those deeper insights, as well as admin insights, which is kind of the repository reporting. Got an upgrade a bit and some improved visuals. So that was Mark's part of it. The next piece, Francois came on stage, showed a fabulous picture of teenage Francois rocking in cow slippers and a graduation robe. I'm still trying to piece those two things together, but it was amazing. And he started his section talking about where Tableau came from and kind of reminding us, why we love it so, and shared the story of Feeding America and how they were using data to improve their services to feed Americans nationwide. Really powerful success story with data and Tableau, and it flowed beautifully into Devs on Stage. Devs on Stage started with the kind of unveiling of data stories, which if you've been with the Tableau community a while and you kind of follow some of the extensions that have been floating around, this is the acquisition of narrative science. I guess it was, I don't even know how long ago it was. I want to say a year, but I feel like that's like way longer. But I have lost all sense of time with the last 2 years. But anyway, so narrative science is basically a AI ML that will read a specific chart and provide a narrative. In the new iteration of it, it's a lot more customizable. You can add your own kind of formatting and color and things of that nature to make it really on brand. And it's really going to bring, those insights for folks who aren't as data literate or data intimate or what have you, to understand the visual. And I think it's a great addition to kind of the whole 10 million data learners. It's going to support those folks as they get more comfortable with using data. The next thing they looked at was Model Builder. And this is basically bringing the power of the Einstein model into Tableau directly. So it's a seamless UI. You're not having to go into Salesforce to do that. I don't know how that licensing works. I don't know if it's built directly in or if it's still attached to Salesforce. More to come on that. So I'm going to just leave that there. They made some additions to the data model, like just the actual kind of relationships. You can now do shared dimensions. So if you're a data modeler type of person, you'll understand that. This is not new, obviously, in the analytics space, but with it coming to Tableau, now you can do multiple connections between logical tables, which is great. It opens up a whole new level of analysis. Web Data Connector 3.0 was next. This was actually announced at Trailhead DX a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago. And this allows for local connectors. So you don't have to worry about setting up a web server to do it anymore. They're much easier to build with the new SDK, and you can utilize table extensions. Now, they dove into this a little bit, and basically inside the Web Data Connector now, you can run advanced analytics. So you can use like Python or R to run sentiment analysis, for example. Rather than doing it inside Tableau, you can do it at the data level before it gets to Tableau. So you're taking that weight off of the dashboard and doing it in the data preparation area, which is awesome. It's early days yet, obviously, on WDC3, but I'm very interested to see where that goes. For prep, they added multi-row calculations. So if you've ever wanted to do moving averages, running totals in prep, now you can build those directly in the data source rather than in desktop. Let's see, Ask Data got Phrase Builder, which it's basically using some AI to figure out what questions are being asked, and later there's actually going to be coming phrase suggestions. I think that's towards the end of the year, which will be gathering everybody's questions and kind of recommending things that might be insightful. The thing that I'm excited about most, well, the last two things, I guess, data orientation. They're actually still determining what the name of that is, but basically, if you've ever created a dashboard and you're trying to figure out how am I going to train the user how to use this, like I've seen tricks with floating containers and images and annotations, and then you close the floating container. I've seen videos, wiki, whatever. This is within the actual dashboard. There's a side pane, and you can provide guidance and instructions on how to interact and use the dashboard. really excited to see how this all lands. But I know for folks who are in organizations who are struggling with kind of training people on how to use dashboards, it's going to be a fantastic addition. And the last thing, the thing that got the big roar, was image roles. This is basically native image use from a column. So if you've got a field that has a URL of an image, you can now drop that in. No hacks, no custom shapes, no nothing. You can now use images. So if you're in a retail and you want to show images of your products, maybe it's an HR thing, who knows? Now you got image roles, which is awesome. So there was the welcome reception, and I just snapped this picture and I was like, I got to show this because this was not on my 2022 bingo card, but it should have been. So we had a group of Elvis impersonators dancing with Astro and Einstein. So yeah, this happened. But it was a good time. Much smaller conference, obviously, this year with just 5,000 folks. But from everything I heard, it was very reminiscent of like early conferences like 2012, 2013, when it was about that size. So anyway, let's see. So Professor Hannah Fry, I think they introduced her as doctor, and backstage I got a chance to chat with her and she's like, I got demoted because I think she sees the professorship higher than the doctorate. But she was fantastic. If you've never seen her speak, if you've never read her books, she's amazing. She's brilliant. And having gotten a chance to chat with her, she's just as lovely as you would imagine she would be to chat with. She told great stories about how we work with data. That middle image, she had presented it as she was talking about engine failures for F1 cars, and saying, well, if the temperature is this, we're seeing these blowups. What the data actually was space shuttle launches. And this was the data that they didn't examine before the Challenger incident in 86. I think it was 86 or 84. But basically they had only looked at the failure rates and not the success rates, which was the red dots. And the red dots made it obviously very clear that the temperature was going to be an issue. And then she started focusing on the point of insemination of cows. It's a very finite time, and that's the line chart that she's showing. Basically, if you wanted to have more male cows than female cows, you could inseminate at a different point. Fascinating, just the data that she presented. I don't think they recorded it, but if you ever get the chance to see her speak, she's fantastic. Very, very entertaining. So Iron Viz, Will Sutton took it home. You can see me in the lower left-hand corner. I was super excited. So this is the second time I sous-vised. I was so proud of Will, and I was just so pumped to be part of that winning partnership. He did fantastic. I suggest go back and watch the video. And I'll tell you kind of a bit of how the sausage is made here. So prior to Iron Viz on Sunday morning, we had a ton of rehearsals. Our final tech dress rehearsal, Will is doing his kind of 4-minute talk, walking through the visualization. And I'm going to show the 3 visualizations here in a minute. And while he's doing it, his monitor that is sitting in front of him that he's kind of using as reference in his viz went blank 12 times, like as he's talking in 4 minutes, like it just kept going blank. And the way that he had built his viz, he had no mouse movements. It just was clicks. So he didn't move his mouse very carefully. He was clicking the button, walking through, didn't say, hey, my monitor's blank. Hey, this is a problem. Like he just kept going, wasn't flustered at all. And at that moment, I was like, I think he's got this. Like he is going to nail this once he hits the stage. So I was right. But let's look at the vizzes if you haven't seen them. So this is CJ Mays' visualization. It was called Misconceptions from the Grapevine. As he was putting it together, he was going for a very Hans Rosling position, basically talking about how good South Africa is doing. Because when we think about Africa, we think, oh yeah, it's, you know, they have literacy problems, they have famine, they have this, that, and the other. And if you've ever read his book, Factfulness, it's really talking about, you know, it's not as bad as people like make it out to be in the media. When he was putting this together, those gauge charts, he thought it kind of looked like a bunch of grapes. So he went with this whole purple color theme. it just didn't land, I think, with the judges. I thought it was a nice viz, nice kind of newspaper grid feel. The double violin plots. Steve and I were talking about that a little bit. It's a little bit difficult to do that comparison, but overall, it was really a nice design. I just think a little bit of it missed the mark. The second one was Kimley Scott, and her story. This was actually her story. She was born in a refugee camp in Cambodia, moved to Australia, and she was comparing basically what her life would have been like had she still been in Cambodia versus her life that she's experienced in Australia. Very simple viz, very simple visuals, very personal story. She actually hand drew the little girl with the flashlight. So just a beautiful, simple viz with a powerful story. Will's visualization, this is actually the last screen of his visual. He had, and I know his viz more intimately, obviously, because I was his sous viz, but he had stacked background images that basically acted as a framework behind all of his different visuals. This is the last screen. In the subsequent screens, the unit chart that is in the upper right corner was kind of in the main section, and it would move based on the story that he was telling at that point, whether it was gender, what year it was. And it was just such a cohesive story. We got to this point and just did some simple country comparisons, and just really well put together. I highly recommend go through and walk through the viz. If you didn't see Iron Viz, it's out on YouTube. You can go watch it, and definitely check out how he constructed this visualization, because it's crazy stuff that I had actually never seen before. So yeah, fantastic. Congrats to all of them. They're all fantastic, and they all did great. They did announce that spring of 23, so we're going to stay in that May timeframe. I think May, June. We'll see what the exact dates are. They haven't announced yet. They haven't announced the location, but Tableau Conference will continue to be an event annually next year and into the future. Sarah Franklin pinky promised on a podcast that it would, so hold her to it. And with that, just thanks for having me. Like I said, I was super busy during conference. I did not see any sessions. Got to do one brain date. I ran some Tableau doctor stuff. But everything that I've heard, everybody that I've talked to, it was a fantastic conference. Everybody had a good time. There was a lot of good sessions. So whether you attended in person or were able to attend virtually, I hope you enjoyed the content. If you can, there is a survey link. The Tableau and Salesforce are gathering feedback on the event. I will try and find that, and I will try and post it in the chat here, so you can take that. But I don't know if there's any questions, but we'll definitely take a look and see here.
Awesome. Thanks for the recap. Does anyone have any questions about TC 2022 or potentially getting some additional inside scoop about TC 23?
Yes, Steve, she did make the point about being data informed versus data driven. It was really, I love seeing her. Like, I think it's probably the third or fourth time I've seen her talk, and she's just fantastic. Oh, I will share this funny thing too. So for Iron Viz, they took a lot of COVID precautions. One of which was in the event that one of us got COVID and we were not able to attend, they made cardboard cutouts of all of us. Whoever made my cardboard cutout did not understand scale. So bear with me one second. Because this is mini me. He's about 4 feet tall. Oh yeah, you can barely see the stand there, but they told me that I could take him home, because other than that, he was just going to get thrown away. Luckily, we didn't have to use any of them. But yeah, so now I have a prop for all of my Zoom calls. At some point, I'm just going to stand him in my chair, and I'm just going to let him do the talking.
So I think the question is, were all of them not to scale, or was it only yours not to scale?
So thanks, Brian. That's the man I used to be. The two other supervisors, they were about this tall to me, so they're in their mid 5 foot. Their cutouts were as tall as me, so they upped the scale of them and downed the scale of me. It seemed like all of the male cutouts got shrank, because like Jock McKinley's judging cutout, which was just from the waist up because he'd be at the table, was very tiny, and Lisa Prescott's was huge. So it was just very, very bizarre.
Awesome.
So somebody mentioned that they did record Heather Fry.
Yes.
I just said Heather, I meant Hannah.
Hannah Fry, yes.
I'm confusing Heather Fry and Hannah Goff. Heather Goff. There we go. Who now, they did not record the live sessions that we did, but there are all the virtual sessions are available, including one that I got to do with Heather that I have not yet seen, but people tell me was worth watching.
Steve, I had a chance to watch it. It's fantastic. They did a wonderful job.
Outstanding. So it's I think it's titled Data Skills Are Off the Charts, What Organizations Are Doing to Recruit and Nurture and Disseminate Data Literacy. When we have an academic, we have a corporate practitioner and doing brilliant work in Heather, and we have a recruiter from Starbucks and their perspective on these things. So giving a little plug for one of the many virtual sessions that you can watch on demand.
So I just popped the survey in the chat. If you did attend, be much appreciated if you take that survey. Feedback is very important. Be
Awesome.
brutally honest.
Awesome. So with that, I do want to round out for next session. We are targeting June 29th for our next Columbus Tableau user group. We're going to try to stick with the 2 to 4 time frame where it is possible. We do have some speakers that we're going to try to get from London, and if we are able to get them, we are going to do more of a morning meeting. So around 11:30 a.m. noonish. So hopefully you guys can use your lunchtime and put it on in the background or have it on while you're working. But there's some really great content. Some of the folks that we've reached out to, just so you can keep an eye out on our schedules as we start to post those, are Emily Kund, Oliver, and I'm probably going to butcher some of these names, Uberti, James Cheshire, Sarah Bartlett, Jeffrey Schaefer, Nicole Clayson, Sarah Bartlett, which I already said, sorry, and Kyle Massey. So there's a lot of folks that we have, ranging from visionaries to folks that are ambassadors in the community. If there is specific content that you guys would like to see, feel free to reach out to myself or Heather or Zach, and we can start to get that slated for some of our later in the year presentations. Awesome. Well, Steve and Mark, I appreciate you guys taking the time and doing a recap of TC and what types of dashboards and visualizations to do when and where and what you should do. With that, is there any more questions? If not, we will give you guys back some time.
Are you going to be moving to in person anytime soon, or is that not in the cards?
Yeah.
Or is that bad? Thanks for asking that, Steve.
I was resisting asking. I don't want to put Aaron on the spot.
Sorry, Aaron.
No, not at all. So I would love to go back in person. We do have a space out at Worthington Industries that we did pre-pandemic, that we have a room allocated to us whenever we need, as long as the space is available. We did a survey back in, I want to say it was February, if folks would be willing to come back in person versus doing it virtually. And about 80% of people said that they did not want to go back in person. So what we're talking about as a leadership team is maybe doing 1 or 2 events throughout the year to bring everyone together, create it as somewhat a type of networking event, and really just out of your comfort level. In those cases, we would go somewhere for like maybe a happy hour or Ohio State or somewhere in local Columbus area for folks to meet and greet. We do have a stipend that we'd be able to use for some of those events as well. But maybe it's one of our closing out the year ceremonies. So in between like Thanksgiving and Christmas, or in August before the kids would go back to school. So we're still trying to figure out the in-person versus virtual scenarios, but we are letting the folks and attendees of the community decide how they want to meet.
Follow the data.
Yep.
I like it. Well, if it
Be
does
data
happen,
informed.
yes, right. Data informed. If it does happen, I'm hopefully be able to come down and see y'all. I haven't seen y'all since pre-pandemic at Worthington Industries. I think was the last time I was there. So yeah, it'd be good to see everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you guys all for joining, and thank you and have a great day.
Good to see you all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye, Steve.
Bye-bye.